All right, the name of this section is Exploring North America. It's section 2.4 in the American Journey book. The learning objective for this section is, why did European nations establish colonies in North America? So you want to ask yourself that question as we go throughout this section. Why did France come over here? Why did Spain come over here? Why does England come over here? And other nations too. So we'll look at that as we go through this PowerPoint. A divided church is where this section starts. Protestantism became a powerful religious force in Europe during the 1600s. So one of the reasons people come over here is because of a movement that happens in Europe, and it starts with that guy. You see his picture down there? That's Martin Luther. All right, Martin Luther is a German priest, or a German monk, I should say, and he nailed a list of 95 complaints about the Catholic Church on a local church door. Now, during this time, the 1600s, 1500s, there's only one church, and that's the Roman Catholic Church, and everybody belongs to it until Martin Luther comes along and nails his 95 thesis, or 95 complaints against the church, to a local church door. Obviously, you can guess what's going to happen. The church is going to get upset with Martin Luther and these 95 complaints against the church. See, now one of the reasons he's upset is because the church asked for donations, which is okay, but the donations, most people can't afford the donations. Remember, most people were peasants at this time and don't have much money. So Martin Luther feels like the church is favoring the wealthy rather than the poor. So Luther's thought is, Luther said the only way to true way to salvation was through faith alone and not through donations. Again, this will upset the church, but a lot of people begin to agree with Luther and his idea. So Martin Luther eventually is kicked out of the church, but other people begin to follow him and break away from the Catholic Church. And you get all these other religions or other churches that start popping up. This whole movement is known as the Protestant Reformation. And as a result of it, you get all these new church groups like the Calvinists, the Anglicans, the Church of England, the Baptists, etc., etc. If you think about today, in today's world, there's lots of different churches out there. That movement comes out of Martin Luther and this Protestant Reformation. All these people breaking away from the Catholic Church and starting their own churches or religions. And break it away. So one of the reasons, again, we go back to that learning objective, why people come over here. European nations begin to sail across the Atlantic to spread Christianity to the natives, Native Americans. The Spanish will travel to the southwestern region, which is down in like present-day Central America and South America. The French will travel to the northeast, which you can think like Ohio, western parts of Pennsylvania is where the French are going to go, and the English and the Dutch will set up their colonies along the east coast. So think of where we are, or the 13 colonies. So here's a little map that's in our classroom. I'm going to bring some arrows up and show you where these different countries are going to settle. So the first arrow is New France. So if you look at the map, you know, again, like I said, Ohio, western parts of Pennsylvania, and further out is where France is going to settle as more and more of these explorers come over and begin to set up settlements. The English will eventually settle those 13 colonies, and we'll get to that in the next chapter, setting up these 13 colonies. But just just for this, understand that this is where England's going to set up. That kind of orangish kind of region is where the English the people of England will settle. And then finally, you've got all that green area is where the Spanish will settle. So Central America, South America, and there's also some other nations that'll settle in the Americas as well. So we'll look at a lot of that in the next chapter as we go. Economic rivalry. European nations competed to establish colonies in the Americas. There's a word down there you need to get familiar with. It's mercantilism, and that's an economic theory. The theory is that the more gold and silver and the more trade and the stronger your navy, the more powerful your nation will be. So getting colonies in the Americas is only going to hopefully get you more gold and silver. It'll get you more trade, and eventually with all the new gold and the trade, it'll lead to you having a stronger navy or stronger army, which will make you more powerful. So there's a race for all these nations to get territory in the New World. And that's what they're going to do. You're going to have France, you're going to have Spain, you're going to have England and other nations coming over here trying to set up colonies. One result of all these nations coming over here is this idea of the Columbian Exchange. So there's all these new resources to be found in the New World. So the Columbian Exchange led to the exchange of plants, animals, and diseases between Europe and the New World. So good things come out of the Columbian Exchange, but also bad things like diseases. So all right, so a little more about the Columbian Exchange. So after Christopher Columbus arrived, the Americas changed, and civilizations, mostly the Native Americans, they dwindled, or the population went down due to diseases, enslavement, and European control. So more of these nations coming over, getting more territory, is really going to have a big effect on the Native Americans. And then, England and France and the Netherlands, they saw Spain. Spain gets finds a lot of gold in Central America and South America. So obviously England and France, those other nations want to get in on that. So they're going to start exploring this new world. So the desire for trade, gold, and territory led European nations to explore the Americas. So that kind of goes back to our learning objective, which is why did European nations establish colonies in North America? Well, Columbian Exchange, religious freedom, all that will lead to people or other nations coming over here. There's a big map of the Columbian Exchange. You can see some of those goods that are being exchanged. So from the Americas to Europe, you can see like pumpkins, turkeys, tomatoes, corn, all that goes back to Europe. And then from Europe, you get things like peaches, coffee beans, bananas, and then disease, all that going back to the Americas. So all that is that Columbian Exchange, this exchange of goods across the ocean. And all that'll begin once these nations come together and collide, these Native Americans and Europeans colliding. All this stuff begins to be exchanged between the different groups. The impact of the Columbian Exchange, like I was just saying, negative impacts: disease, enslavement of the native people. Europeans bring over crops, sugarcane, wheat, coffee. Europeans brought crops such as corn, potatoes, tomatoes back to Europe, so they get this stuff from the Native Americans and bring that over to Europe. And as a result, European population skyrocketed. All right, Europeans didn't have access to all this good food like corn and potatoes and tomatoes. And the thing about like potatoes and corn is it's a pretty hardy vegetable, so it can grow in all kinds of conditions. So they can easily grow it in Europe, and when they can grow it, it can feed lots and lots of people. So people become healthier. They have more food, more nutrients, so people live longer and populations increase. Now the opposite effect kind of happens to the Native Americans. They get all these diseases from the Europeans. Their population goes down because they have no immunity to the diseases that the Europeans bring over. All right, next section is a Northwest Passage. Explorers hope to find a passageway through North America to Asia. So basically they're hoping to find a way around North America by going north and hoping to get to Asia. So those hopes of still getting to Asia so they can trade for all those great things that we talked about, the spices, the silk, the porcelain. Europeans still want those things, and they still want to find a quick way to Asia so they can trade with them. All right, so other nations like England and France are going to start sending out explorers just like the Spanish and the Portuguese did to try and find a trade route. One of those explorers is John Cabot. Sailed for England and lands on Newfoundland, which is in present-day Canada. And England will use this as a claim for land for England. So in the future, they can go and set up settlements and colonies in North America. Another explorer is Verrazano, and he will explore the east coast of North America. So from Nova Scotia, which again is in Canada, all the way down to present-day North Carolina. So he'll go up and down the coastline looking for some kind of passage through North America to the other side so they can get to Asia. None of these guys find that passage. Here's a map of North America and what they were hoping to find with the Northwest Passage. So you can follow that red line. They were hoping to find some way going over or north of North America, but they ran into a big problem up there. You can think about it. They ran into ice, lots of it. All right, so the further north you go, the more ice you run into. So a lot of their ships would get stuck in ice. They'd have to wait for it to thaw, and then they would turn around and go back. And they've never found that Northwest Passage because of all that ice. Jacques Cartier sails for France, looking for that Northwest Passage. In the process, he sails up and down the St. Lawrence River, which is up in Canada and goes all the way down into the Great Lakes. And he's searching for gold and a sea passage, and he finds neither. Henry Hudson eventually sails for England. All right, he's also looking for that Northwest Passage, runs into a lot of ice, but does have, he is credited with discovering New York. They named the Hudson River after him. And you can also see on that map, there's the Hudson Bay up there as well, named after Henry Hudson. He tries a number of times to find that Northwest Passage. So much, he's so determined to find it that eventually his crew gets tired of him looking for this Northwest Passage, and they'll have a mutiny, and Henry Hudson will never be seen again after the mutiny on the ship.